mamas. Welcome back to Taboo Talks with Crystal. I'm so happy to have you here for another dive into healing, empowerment, and this week, parenting while healing from trauma. If you've been tuning in, you already know that we've been working on reclaiming our voices, setting boundaries, and releasing shame. Believe it or not, we are a full month into our podcast, so take a second just to celebrate that. Super exciting. Today's episode is about how we can do all of those things while raising emotionally resilient children. I mean, let's be real, motherhood is tough, and healing at the same time, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. And it can feel like a juggling act where you're afraid to drop any balls. But remember, it's not about perfection, it's about progress for both you and your little ones. So before we dive in, I just want to share a little bit of my story. After I lost my husband and the dust began to settle, a new normal started for us. And as a survivor, I was able to manage my emotions fairly well when I was focused on the logistics of our circumstances. But once I had to go back to just living life, being me, taking care of the kids, being mom, that's when I completely broke down. Lucky for me, I had support. My sister was the one who came to my rescue. She picked up the kids, made sure they were taken care of, and she made sure I checked myself into a hospital to seek treatment. At that time, I was in so much pain that it was literally seeping out of me. And I knew my kids were absorbing every bit of it. So then the cycle of thoughts would start. I'm totally messing them up. They would be better off with anyone else. Who needs me? I'm broken. Who wants a broken mother? For me, it was really deeply painful because, as far as I could tell, I had failed at breaking the generational cycle because the very cycle I was trying to break repeated itself. But I had to eventually learn and come to understand that that wasn't how I was supposed to break this cycle. I was supposed to break it by showing what to do next. I was trying so hard to keep it together, to not let the kids see me struggle, but you know what? They saw me anyway. And what I learned in that hospital is that it was okay. I learned that it wasn't about shielding them from the pain, but about showing them how to rise above it, how to handle their emotions, how to process, how to heal. So today, we're going to talk about how we can start doing that together. All right, let's get into it. Parenting while healing from trauma is no easy task, like we said. But it's so powerful because as we heal ourselves, we're also teaching our kids how to navigate their own emotions. And that's how we break those generational cycles we were just talking about. Today, we're going to focus on three main things: emotional regulation for both you and your kids, 2, modeling vulnerability and why that's actually a strength, and 3, creating a safe space where your children can express their emotions without judgment. So let's break it down. Step 1, emotional regulation. Let's talk about the roller coaster of emotions. Because let's face it, healing can feel like an emotional roller coaster. And guess what? Our kids, they're on their own emotional roller coaster. So the challenge here is, how do we manage our own emotions without letting them spill over onto our kids? And I'm going to be real with you, it will never be perfect. And that's okay. None of us are perfect. One thing that has helped me tremendously that we've talked about in the past is called practicing the pause. So before reacting, whether you're feeling angry or frustrated or overwhelmed, take a deep breath. And just give yourself a moment to pause. Practice the pause. It's about grounding yourself in that moment so that we're not reacting out of the trauma. You're able to respond from a place of calm. And here's the magic. When your kids see you taking that moment, they learn to do it too. Because you're modeling emotional regulation. So start small. Maybe it's 3 deep breaths before you say anything. Or even saying, you know what? Mama needs a minute to calm down. It shows them it's okay to have big emotions. You don't have to hide them. But it's also not only okay, but necessary to take the time to handle them. Not just let them build up, not let them explode out all over everyone, but to take the time to handle them. So step number 2 is modeling vulnerability. And trust me, I know this is tricky because so many of us were taught that we're supposed to be strong all the time. Be strong for your kids. But here's what I've learned. Vulnerability is strength. When my kids see me working through my emotions, when they see my big emotions and they see me working through them, they learn it's okay not to have everything figured out. And it's okay to feel what they're feeling and to be who they are. There was a time when I felt like I had to hide my sadness, my pain, my trauma from my children. But what I realized is that when I opened up to them, in age-appropriate ways, of course, it created a deeper connection. And connection is how you get things done. Connection is how you get your kids to do the things that you want them to do. So I'm not saying that you should, sit there and unload your trauma on your kids. By no means. But saying something like, mommy is feeling really sad right now, but I'm working through it. That teaches them it's okay to have hard days. It shows them emotions don't have to be scary. I know one of the ways that I do that is that when grief hits me out of nowhere and I have those moments where my heart is aching and my soul starts crying, I've taught my children that sometimes grief hits you out of nowhere and that's how it feels. So I'm able to just turn to them and say, I'm thinking about Daddy. And they get it. Sometimes they'll put a hand on my shoulder. Sometimes they'll give me a hug or hold my hand. And this is what emotional resilience looks like. Not pretending everything is okay, but learning how to work through it. When we model vulnerability, we teach our kids how to be kind to themselves when they're struggling. And that, mamas, is a gift that will carry them through life. Step 3, creating a safe space for your kids. The third piece of this puzzle is creating a safe space for your kids to express their emotions. We know what it's like to grow up in environments where emotions weren't always welcome, right? Maybe we were told, don't cry, or just tough it out. But we're changing that narrative for our children. Creating a safe space doesn't mean letting everything slide or not having any rules. It's about allowing them to feel what they're feeling without shame or without judgment. It's really hard, and I'm still learning. But when my kids are having a meltdown, I try to remember it's not just bad behavior. It's them trying to communicate something. So instead of saying, stop crying, I'll say, I see you're really upset. Do you want to talk about it, or do you just need some time alone to take a break and breathe? Last time I did this with my 6-year-old, she said, "I'm not mad, Mom, I'm sad." And then she chose to take a moment to herself, and the screaming stopped. Giving them that choice shows that their emotions are valid, and it helps them learn to regulate. And here's the bonus. When you create that safe space for your kids, you start creating one for yourself too. The more you allow them to express their emotions freely, the more you realize it's okay for you to do the same. Healing happens in those moments, together. So, mamas, I know that healing while parenting can be overwhelming, but I want you to know that you are doing an incredible job already. Just by listening to this episode, you are showing that you're committed to not only your own healing, but to also raising emotionally resilient kids. And that's so powerful. The small steps you take today, whether it's pausing, practicing the pause before reacting, being open and vulnerable with your children, or creating that safe space so they can be open and vulnerable with you. Any of those are going to have a lasting impact, not just on you, but on generations to come. I know this journey isn't easy, but we're in it together. If anything from today's episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to reach out and share. I always say healing happens in community. We need support. And I'm so grateful we get to walk this path together. Also, if you've been loving these episodes, I'm working on something really special, a way for us to dive even deeper into these topics, to heal and to grow in a more connected space. More details on that soon. Next week, we'll be diving into self-compassion because let's be real, we are our own worst critics, and that needs to change. You don't want to miss it. Take care of yourself, hug those babies tight, and remember, you've got this. Be sure to subscribe, share this episode with a fellow mama who needs it, and follow me on Instagram at Flight of the Phoenix Collective. Let's keep the conversation going. You're doing an amazing job, mama, and we're breaking these cycles together.